All right, I think we'll go ahead and we'll get started. First, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. I know these are challenging times, especially during COVID, and the last thing sometimes people need are one more Zoom meeting or online meeting. And so we're just grateful you're spending your time with us today to explore some really important issues. We're also so grateful. It is so great to be a part of ExcelinEd's EdPalooza. They've always hosted the best annual policy summit. This year is no exception. So even with all the travel restrictions with COVID, they're using technology to deliver some of the best content and holding some of the best conversations. It's an understatement to say that COVID has brought online learning into the mainstream. All of a sudden, you've had every school district in the country experimenting with new types of technologies and approaches to making sure their students can continue to learn while their buildings were closed. But it takes a lot of important planning and intentional effort to ensure that online education is a high quality experience for both teachers and students. Today, we're going to learn from some of the very leaders who have been at the forefront of this for years. Julie Young founded the Florida Virtual School, which was the nation's largest online school, and she's now leading a next generation model through ASU Prep Digital. ASU is reaching deep into both K-12 and higher ed to find and create multiple pathways to lifelong learning, bridging both sectors and using a lot of new technologies. They're also moving away from content silos, age boundaries based on grade levels, and more importantly, they're moving toward advancement based on readiness and prior mastery. So we're going to hear what those practices look like. We're going to learn from that and how that can be scaled across the country. We're also going to hear from Representative Todd Jones and Senator Howard Stephenson, who have firsthand experience with how the power of online learning can help expand opportunities for students, and also ways public policy can remove barriers and scale these opportunities for students, not just in states, but across the country. And so excited for the conversation. Just a couple of housekeeping items. First, if you have questions, there's a great question and answer feature on the technology that EdPalooza is using. So just click on that, type in the question, that will go up to a queue, and then we'll use that as part of the Q&A later in the session. We also, we're gonna have Julie do a presentation, then we're gonna have a conversation with Julie, Todd, and Howard, and myself. And then we're gonna invite you to be part of the conversation too. And at that point, you can click on raise your hand and we'll pull you in to ask your question as well. But really, at any point, if you have a question, click on that button for the Q&A, submit it, and we'll make sure it goes to the top of the queue and we'll tackle it. So without any more time, I'm going to turn it over to Julie, who's going to talk us a little bit through what ASU Prep Digital is, and then it's going to set the table for the rest of our conversation. So Julie, I turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, John, and welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. We're going to spend a little time today talking about what's working and what the challenges are. I think if you watched the Today Show this morning, you heard there's a new study out by NWEA that really focused on the learning loss with math, especially in the primary grades, up to 5 to 8%. But interestingly enough, they're seeing some gains in reading. That doesn't surprise me based on the modality of learning. So we're going to talk, like I said, a little bit about what's working in this new world we're living in. So at ASU Prep Digital, I think you looked too far. Yeah, there we go. ASU Prep Digital is part of ASU Prep Academy, which is a network of charter schools that were authorized by Arizona State University about 10 years ago. And at this particular time, as you might imagine, because other online providers are also experiencing the same phenomena, we have seen an extreme amount of growth in the last 9 months. So we are currently working with 790 schools in the state of Arizona, over 300 districts in the state. We have a digital academy that is a full-time digital academy as part of our portfolio. Last year, that digital academy had approximately 600 full-time students. And this year, we have over 4,200 full-time students. So that represents about a 710% growth trajectory, again, over the last year, 9 months or so. We have been involved in a massive amount of teacher training. We have an expert staff in online and remote learning. And so we have really worked with teachers all over the world to teach them how to move from a traditional classroom to an online environment, to a remote environment, and back and forth as the virus continues to hackle with our lives. We are serving over 300 plus students internationally in 32 different countries. That certainly is an increase, a significant increase also from last year, and 100% satisfaction rate, which is most important to us in terms of customer service of everyone we serve. And just a finer point, when we talk about serving, we're serving by either providing an instructional leader to provide instruction into classrooms. We are serving by licensing content, and we are serving by providing professional development and upskilling teachers, again, around the world. So as we look at on our immersion side of the house, this is our brick and mortar side of the house. What we have noticed is we've significantly increased our diversity within our brick and mortar schools. There are 10 of them, and they kind of run the gamut of socioeconomic status from one of our schools that sits in the highest poverty zip code in the state of Arizona. We have another that is a STEM school that sits on the edge of one of our campuses for ASU. We have a downtown urban district, and then we have a little 9 through 12 blended learning model that partners with the Barca Academy that is on the edge of an Indian reservation in Casa Grande, Arizona. So you can see by the slide what the diversity within those schools are. We're also doing a redesign project at our Poly school. That's the one that sits on the edge of the campus, which is all around project-based learning and personalized learning. And so we didn't plan to do that in a virtual environment, but we have launched that in a virtual environment. It's going quite well. So one of the things that is important to talk about is what makes us different than other online schools. And this is kind of gets to the meat of what we're talking about here today. We not only encourage our students at ASU Preparatory Academy to start college and high school, we pave the way for them through digital experiences and opportunities. So what you see on the screen is what we call a pathway into the major. This is an example of one. So if a student's a 9th grader, and let's just say they're interested in electrical engineering, we map out for them what their 9, 10, 11th, and 12th grade course loads should look like that actually get them into the major by their junior year. We're not interested in them completing all of their requirements. We're really interested in them getting into a major. So everything you see on the screen that is maroon is an ASU online course. And they have an opportunity to take those courses through state funding if they're an Arizona student, or through a tuition model if they're outside of Arizona at no additional cost at a significantly reduced rate. And so truly very focused on reducing time and cost to degree. We do not limit our kids by their age or their grade level. We look at their academics and their desire and ability to move on when they're ready. So we have some 12, 13, 14-year-old students that are actually taking college courses, which is so cool. So I think all of us have seen in the news about the enrollment declines in our universities across the country. So this gives you a little sense from a 2020 report from the National Student Clearinghouse. You'll see that across all institutions, and this was actually in October, that enrollment is down approximately 4%. But what you also see from this slide is how it has impacted different races and different sectors of our communities and of our society. So the other thing that we do is we work with collaborative partners across the world at this point in time. I'm going to highlight just a few of those for you. California, as an example, is one of our states where we feel like we've had quite a bit of impact. We are serving over 23,000 students in the state. We have trained 1,500 teachers in the state and impacted those teachers as we upskill them to do their work and to do that work better. And you can see a list of the districts that we've actually had the opportunity to work with. And I think what's really important there is also to just to point out that we're serving both public school communities as well as private and parochial types of communities across the gamut. And so very excited about that work there. In Hawaii, major footprint in Hawaii, again, very excited about that work. We've infused ASU PD content with Hawaiian culture-based education, which again represents our ability to be flexible. As we have gone into each of these states, each of these communities, the question has been, what problem are you trying to solve? What opportunity would you like to create? And in this particular case, this was one of those challenges and opportunities that they would like to create. So we're serving over 6,500 elementary students through the Hawaiian Department of Ed. We've trained over 800 of their teachers, and we're serving 18,000 full-time students over the next couple of years in Hawaii. North Dakota, this is a first of its kind virtual learning consortium that's powered by ASU Prep Digital. So we've really worked with them to help create a training opportunity across the state that will impact how their teachers will impact their students. And we have certainly focused on the rural communities in the K-8 world there. And then in Utah, we have over 5,000 enrollments in Utah at the moment, and that's up from 3,000 last year. We're also rolling out our open courses, which are college courses that are open courses, which you'll hear more about. We've designed a blended learning institute, a summer academy for teachers, which has been incredibly impactful. And again, we've just seen a significant increase in enrollment in Utah, and you'll hear more about that today from Senator Stephenson. And finally, the Arizona Virtual Teacher Institute. We were funded through our governor, our Department of Ed, and the Helios Foundation to put together an Arizona Virtual Teacher Institute, which has enabled us to serve teachers throughout the state of Arizona to teach them again, how do I move from a traditional classroom to an online classroom to a remote environment, and then back and forth as the virus commands us, so to speak. But we're very focused on upskilling the teachers so that they can do the work themselves, as opposed to being an online school that takes all their kids. We want to enable them to do this work, do it better, make Arizona a better place for kids to learn and for teachers to teach. So you can see the statistics there. 5,000 teachers already trained. We have the capacity to train another 15,000 as those needs arrive. And then we believe that that will impact a significant number of students along the way. So with that, that gives you kind of an overview of what ASU Prep and ASU Prep Digital is, and the focus of ASU on reducing time and cost to degree, and also creating a continuum of learning from pre-K through life, and doing that in real time with real kids, real schools, and real families. And with that, John, I will turn it back over to you.
Okay, wonderful. Let's bring in Senator Stephenson and Representative Jones into the conversation. Senator Stephenson, talk a little bit of, Julie just mentioned that ASU Prep Digital has expanded in serving students in Utah. Can you share a little bit about what led to that partnership, and just how did that sort of play out? How did it go from sort of a conversation to actually serving students in your state? Oh, and Howard, I think you might be muted. It wouldn't be an online. Oh, still are. Nope. Still can't hear you.
John, his icon shows a microphone. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Howard, try taking off your earphone set.
I had you for a brief second there, Howard.
Do you have your sound on, Howard? I've done that before.
I'll tell you what, Wyatt, the senator's troubleshooting, because this wouldn't be a Zoom meeting or a live webinar if like we weren't having some technical challenges.
Exactly.
Maybe Representative Jones, just, I mean, obviously there's a lot of, again, there's so many different examples of online learning that are happening around the country right now. How do we differentiate sort of good, high quality experiences with not great experiences? Like how, because you've seen it all. And so
Yep.
How are you seeing like examples of high quality online learning, and what are those like traits and hallmarks there?
Sure. So I have been fortunate enough to be in this for a couple of decades, well before my elected life. And I think this is one of those times where there were those districts that were prepared and those that were ill prepared. And then frankly, there are those that are scrambling to get prepared still, and we appreciate that effort. But I think across the board, whenever I hear from parents, and may that be here in Georgia, maybe in a specific district, or maybe outside in terms of the Southeast or across the country, or even outside of our country, we're hearing significantly around, my child is seeing effectively the teacher in the classroom. So what I'm thinking of are live lessons. And I think we know from those of us who've been in virtual education that a live lesson for 6 straight hours is something that we can't keep children engaged. If we can't keep children engaged, then we ultimately cannot, we can't help them get taught.
Yeah.
We can't provide the knowledge transfer that's necessary. So when you think about good practices, and again, not to prop up what Julie's doing at ASU Prep Digital and her entire team, but what we see there are a way to be able to assess the child, a way to provide a great marriage of, I'll say, technology and the teacher. I think without a doubt, we can't remove the teacher from the equation, but we got to find a way to augment the teacher in such a way that we have it in bite size or chunk size type content, so the child can get engaged for 10 or 15, 20 minutes, get an assessment, maybe sit back, read, review, and then get re-engaged. I think when we think about, and I think that's what the key is in terms of what we're seeing, maybe within Metro Atlanta in Georgia, maybe within the rural areas of Georgia. And I don't even want to get into what the digital divide is causing within not just rural Georgia, but any of the rural parts of our country. But I think at the end of the day, the key really does come down to, can we get each one of the districts, and we do know that school goes through those districts, not through the state or through the federal government. Can we get them prepared in such a way that there is that proper marriage? And if that proper marriage is there between technology and effectively the approach, and then obviously with the curriculum. And I think basically assuming that you can take, I'll say, in-classroom curriculum and immediately transfer it to the digital side, that's a false assumption. So the curriculum needs to be set also. So I don't want to take too much of the time. I think we got Howard back, but I think those are things that need to be considered.
Yeah. No, I'm so grateful you brought up the digital divide. I know Governor Bush has been talking about this and writing a lot about it. And there just was a conversation with Secretary King this morning talking about it too. So I mean, you can't have online learning unless there's connections for kids to be able to participate. Senator Stephenson, let's try you again. Is it working this time? Oh, I can't hear you. It's so interesting because like the system seems to be picking you up because the box is flashing, but we just can't hear the audio, Senator. Unfortunately, no, still not working.
But you are right, John. I'm seeing the dashboard and it's flashing.
Yeah. Yeah. Senator, we're going to have one of the StreamPoint moderators helping sort of troubleshoot this with you. And while we're troubleshooting, because I want to get to you about some of Clay Christensen's work and the way that you're thinking about this. Julie, I want to build off of something Todd was saying about this engagement, because this is one of the big challenges that I've seen with online learning during this period of COVID, is that people thought if you just put a teacher on Zoom, or if you just throw up an online course, that is delivering education. And it turns out engaging kids and keeping kids engaged is super, super challenging. So, I mean, with all of your experience from Florida Virtual School to ASU Prep Digital, how are you keeping kids engaged during these like periods where it's a lot of video and a lot of online?
Yeah, the engagement factor in the online world is not a new one. And, we would talk about, what are the behavior problems in online learning for the last 25 years, and participation and procrastination come to mind as the two major behavior issues that we sometimes have. And so teachers have long since had to come up with different ways to engage kids other than just, show up to do math. And, one of the major mistakes that we're seeing right now in the remote learning modality is this idea that kids show up at the same time every day and they're in front of a Zoom all day long, and then they end at the same time. We're really losing the advantage of online learning and in the virtual experience by requiring them to stay lockstep. And that's happening all over the world, frankly. So, it's kind of, kids have to know you love them before they're going to learn from you. And so our teachers do a remarkable job of creating different experiences that, kids come for those experiences in addition to the learning within the live lessons. And that could be, we have over 20 different clubs that kids participate in. They come together for those, creating different types of competitions. We're talking about creating a Jeopardy competition. Yesterday, we met with a company that does online project-based learning and sets kids up in teams. And then the teams can either work together on their own or they can compete. Kids come together for online recess, where they can come in and do Hangman or Pictionary or, name that game that you can put together in an online world. But then also getting the kids to have an active role in the classroom. And what you'll notice, what we've noticed, is teachers are still teaching the same way that they did in the classroom. And so they're lecturing. So I'm a student and I'm in front of Zoom and I'm listening to a lecture for 30 minutes. And guess what? Whether I'm physically there or not, I am not mentally there. And so, this whole thing over the last, 25 years that we've talked about in terms of how the teacher's role has to change, and which then of course changes the role of the student, where they become a very active learner and a contributor to their peers. This is the perfect opportunity for teaching and learning to take advantage of this medium, and rather than blame it for what we're not doing well, is to look for that, what is it we can do better in this environment? And engaging kids is something that we truly have an opportunity here.
Julie, I want to use what we're experiencing right now with Senator Stephenson. It's really sort of a learning question. I'm curious, how do you and ASU handle sort of technical issues because I can imagine with the sheer number of kids you're serving across all the geographies, what happens if the video is not working or the login isn't working? How do students and their families reach out to you and get those problems resolved? I would imagine the tech support is incredibly challenging.
By the way, can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Yay!
That's great.
Okay.
Senator. Okay, we're going to have Julie answer a quick tech support, then we're going to come to you. This is fantastic. Thank you so much, StreamPoint.
So I think one of the things we did is we just surrounded them with multiple ways to get to us. And so in the initial stages, we set up Zoom rooms that were just open. So a student can't get in or is having an issue, they can go into the Zoom room and they can talk to somebody immediately, or there's a phone number to call. But we created, and certainly there's help tickets, but really created lifelines all around the students, and so that they had multiple ways, whether they were a student, whether they're a parent, whether they were a teacher, that they could get access to that help almost immediately.
Wonderful. All right, Senator, you're back. When in doubt, turn it off and turn it plug on. So just turn it back on. So this is fantastic. Look, let's go back to the original question. Tell us about how this partnership evolved with bringing ASU into Utah. And then also reflect, go ahead.
We started 10 years ago with legislation called the Statewide Online Education Program that showed that allowed every student in high school, whether they're in a district, a charter, or homeschool or private school to attend up to 6 online classes of their choice, and the state would pay for those. That started slowly. It increased about 50% per year, actually, starting 10 years ago. But with the advent of ASU Prep Digital now available to Utah students a couple of years ago, it has grown exponentially because homeschool and private school and others see that we now have a world-class provider with both a teacher for every course and a high-quality curriculum, computer-assisted instructional software, and the kinds of tools that students need to be independent in their learning, but to have the support that they need. And so our students, as was noted, we have 5,000 of them now on ASU Prep Digital. None of them skipped a beat with COVID because they were already getting a world-class education. And so, as Clayton Christensen has said, who has been a common speaker at this conference, and now unfortunately has left us, but as he taught, the disruptive technology usually takes root in the unserved or underserved populations. And those homeschool kids, those rural kids have been getting what they need. In fact, in some ways, these rural kids are getting better education than the kids in the big schools of 2,000 students because they have this world-class opportunity and it is always personalized for them. Whereas in their big high school, they typically would be one of 30 kids in a class in Utah. But these rural kids, the homeschool kids, are getting everything they need. But now we have this new underserved class of students that are kept from being in the schools. And now that has got even greater attention in Utah and across the nation, because as Todd said, teachers used to a classroom setting don't automatically do a good job in an online setting.
Aaron, I wonder if you could unpack for us a little bit more this idea of underserved or unserved, that, you know, in a traditional setting, that is somewhat clear. In an online setting, you have this sort of spectrum. You have kids that aren't logging onto the system when they should be. You have some kids that are just struggling, that may not be getting the extra support. But what is this new unserved population of students that you're seeing emerge during this period?
I can best tell that by giving an example of my one granddaughter and then some other grandchildren. My granddaughter, who is taking 6 online high school courses from ASU Prep Digital, is getting everything she needs in spite of COVID. My other grandkids, as I observe them participating in their Zoom meetings, kids are spacing in and out. Teachers are trying to be the sage on the stage and trying to do what they would normally do in the classroom, and it's just not working well because they don't have the training that, say, the ASU Prep Digital teachers do when they do group instruction, for example. They've honed their skills, and we need to transfer that to all of our schools so that they can also have that kind of thing, and also expand the availability of ASU Prep Digital and providers like it that can reach these kids. I was one of those rural kids who grew up in, I had a graduating class of 22, not 1922, but 22 students. And I tell you, I wanted to go to a good college, but we didn't have a teacher who could teach calculus. And so I had to take an online trigonometry course that was just really brutal because I didn't get the kind of support that kids can get now with ASU Prep Digital courses. So every child who's serious about preparing for college in rural Utah can now get an equal or better quality of courses for preparation for college than they ever had before. And what we're finding is that with lots of these kids who thought they weren't college ready, they didn't have a trajectory for college, now discover that, hey, I'm really smart, as Carol Dweck has shown in her work, and also Anders Ericsson in his book Peak. Everybody can be expert at everything if they get the immediate interactive feedback provided by the software that is incorporated in ASU Prep Digital, and the kind of personalized instruction, so that they're not set in a batch of other kids and moved forward in a batch and held back if they're progressing faster than the batch. This truly is personalized for every kid.
I want to, Julie, just build off of something the senator said about teacher training, because again, it's more than just learning how to use a technology, that this is a new way of teaching. The engagement that you were just talking about, all this requires professional development. I mean, how have you done, like, what is the secret sauce there for doing professional development for so many teachers? Some that have experience with this medium, some that don't, some that are transitioning into it. But what has been your sort of key to success to ramping up this many teachers to be successful in this medium?
Well, I think Julie's best at answering that.
Yeah, I think to your point, John, we learned a long time ago that just because you're a great teacher in the classroom doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a great teacher online. In fact, it could have the absolute opposite effect based on whether you're there to perform, which many teachers are, or whether you know how to facilitate learning on a personalized level where every student's an individual. And so, first and foremost, starting with the basics and really understanding that our teachers across this country were not trained to teach in an online environment. There are anomalies of states. Florida has done a really great job. Florida Virtual School created an online internship program years and years ago. And so those students that are going to Florida institutions it's highly likely they're getting an opportunity to do an online internship at Florida Virtual School, but that's an anomaly. And so what we know, and we've all learned because of this particular crisis, is we aren't training our teachers for the world that the students live in. And so that is rapidly changing, obviously, as teachers, colleges around the country are looking at how they're turning out their teachers. With that said, what we're actually doing is going into our schools and into our districts. And the first thing we do is the teachers self-evaluate and we figure out where their skill sets are. Some of them are incredibly basic and some of them are more advanced than they realize. And then doing a lot of demonstrations. One of the advantages we have at ASU Prep and ASU Prep Digital is that we are an ecosystem of schools within our network, but 10 of our schools are brick and mortar, like I mentioned earlier, very diverse, very much representative of our state. And then ASU Prep Digital is, kind of underpins them all. So we can test with our own students and our own teachers the different training techniques and mechanisms, and then hone those and then roll them out to teachers around the globe. But we also have to realize, as people who are in the position to help upskill these teachers, is just like our students are all in different places, so are our teachers. So we have to personalize the learning experience for the teachers as well. And so we're doing some kind of core training with teachers that everybody needs. How do you use an LMS? What do you do with the student information system? How do you analyze data? How do you engage students? But then what we're also doing is a lot of customized training for teachers who are at different levels or districts that are at different levels. And so I think the secret sauce is, just like I have always advocated, that we put the student at the center of all of our decisions, that as we're looking at our teachers, we do the same. And we really do think about every single teacher as an individual and personalize that professional development experience for them. And the last thing I'll say about that is also we're creating a buddy system within our own schools, where our very experienced digital teachers will be buddies to our less experienced brick and mortar teachers, just as a lifeline, just somebody to reach out to. This is not a paid position. This is we're all in this together opportunity. And so how do we build these communities, which we're also doing with teachers around the globe, building different professional learning communities to support each other?
It's great. Senator, I wonder if I could come back to you to talk. You had mentioned a piece of legislation that you passed in Utah that helped sort of pave a way for this type of partnership with ASU. I wonder if you could just talk and reflect a little bit about, like, why is legislation so critical, particularly at the state level? Like, what does that enable in terms of the types of online learning that we're talking about here today?
Well, Utah has been a leader in school choice, but we've really never had a course choice for high school students. They may want to participate in most of the high school experiences and the activities. My daughter Jada, for example, is on the high school swim team, and yet she's taking 6 courses from ASU Prep Digital. She never thought she was good at math. And kids tonight across America will be crying over their math homework. She doesn't cry over her math homework anymore because she has the support from a teacher and a success coach. So in Utah, we decided that we wanted to offer course choices for high school students. And if we had just left it up to the school districts, charter schools, and others, we would have left out so many students and they wouldn't have moved. With the legislation, it caused the school system, which is often monolithic, to be nimble and to start addressing these issues and to realize that they can do better by teaming with expertise outside their system. And so we got it through in the very first session. And our State Department of Ed has been a great supporter of this course choice option that now is exploding because of the availability of ASU Prep Digital. Before that, we had some school districts that kind of dabbled in online courses, but they weren't a real quality. They were more of an excuse not to let kids escape to another course provider. But now that we have this world-class provider, kids who never were on a trajectory of college readiness now realize that they are smart. We had an interview with 5 kids from Arizona who have been on ASU Prep Digital. And I said to these 5 kids who were just really articulate, I said, you guys are articulate, you're confident, you know where you're headed. What about the kids who are shy or who don't think they're smart or just not succeeding in school? You guys obviously are succeeding. And the first person to respond was a little girl who reminded me of young Cosette in Les Miserables. She was just this little waif of a sophomore student who said, you are just describing who I used to be. And it brought tears to everybody's eyes in the room as we were interviewing them, because she said, I now am confident. I've been a homeschool student my entire life, and I've been shy my entire life, but I'm not anymore. And I'm confident. I am a good student, and I am going to a good college when I graduate high school. This is a game changer for kids who didn't think they were on a trajectory of a good college education.
So powerful. I love that anecdote, which just so perfectly captures this. Representative Jones, same question. I mean, Senator was talking about why policy was needed, just because schools aren't going to naturally gravitate towards course choice or towards other types of online learning. How are you seeing this sort of interact with policies that you're observing with school choice work? Just reflect a little bit on that.
So you're right. The institution of K-12 will not move unless in so many different ways outside influences cause it to. What we've seen, and I got to be frank with you, I want to use Howard's batch metaphor and Julie's lockstep metaphor. What we've seen is the school choice environment here in Georgia, the folks who have, I'll say, typically been within there, it has been, I'll say, maybe a minority to a larger minority of the population, but definitely not even trending towards 50%. That's changing during COVID. And I think pretty interestingly, the folks that are changing it and pushing it really trend toward what Howard is talking about in terms of access. we're seeing our rural children being able to get access, not just to good education, but as Howard said, course choice, not just school choice. But the second thing I want to mention is, from a policy standpoint, one of the things that I've been advocating is the removal of school year, or pardon me, of birth year within K-12. I've never understood. I mean, I understood back in the late 1800s when we put it together why we had birth year in terms of when you're 5 years old, go into kindergarten. But today, given the strength of the technology that exists along with the teachers, we have the ability to remove that. And to Howard's point, we can create the engagement, and we can be able to provide our students a well-timed set of courses like Julie alluded to, as long as the teachers are prepared. So what we've seen with the school choice folks is a new group of parents who are coming in. Just had breakfast with one of them a couple days ago, who was like, I've had my children in the brick and mortar. Now, even after COVID, we want them to be able to stay within a hybrid school. So this is one that goes face-to-face 2 days a week, homeschool 3 days a week. And the reason why is because they want them to go at their own pace. They don't get that opportunity sitting in a physical school. And I think that's something that when we come out of this pandemic, if I'm a superintendent of a brick and mortar, the question has to be, how do I deliver engaging course choices inside the classroom and outside the classroom? Because it can no longer be just about, like Howard said, I'm one of 30 and I'm supposed to go at the median. No. I'm one of 30, and it needs to be individualized to me in terms of my ability in calculus, my ability in physics, and I might be slower in one and faster in the other. How do you deliver that either in a physical, a hybrid, or a virtual? And I think that's what we're seeing in school choice, is a new group of folks who now never labeled themselves school choice, but now that they've seen what the possibilities are with this flexibility, they suddenly are jumping in, and now what used to be maybe a minority is a very large minority, trending towards 50% of parents that are saying, I am school choice, and I think this has helped them redefine themselves. So,
yeah, it's been one of the most amazing things. Not only, as COVID sort of forced this experiment with online learning, it's really sort of forced this massive wave of school choice that parents for the first time are more engaged in picking options for their kids, just because schools have forced them to. They don't have the luxury of being able to, if they don't want to go into the school's hybrid system, they need to find something else. Julie, I wonder if you can reflect a little bit on the policy question here, since so many of the people that are coming into EdPalooza today are policymakers. They're people like Representative Jones and Senator Stephenson, and you're breaking boundaries not just by the geography of students that you're serving, but also in this whole notion of merging higher ed with K-12. And did that need policy changes in order to enable that? Or how did you go about sort of creating this model when there's so many legacy sort of barriers and regulations that just want to restrict us to the status quo?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think what's really interesting is every state is different when you're asking about the policies and the barriers, and the barriers and policies in Arizona were not restricting us based on how we sit within the institution of ASU. And so we don't just offer our students in Arizona College, we pave the way for them and kind of lay it out for them. And what's been really incredible, and it makes so much sense when you get into the middle of it. When we think about our traditional community college type dual enrollment or advanced placement IB kind of experience, they're full of boundaries. There's either a boundary on the geography of which community college a high schooler can associate with, or there's a boundary on the age or the grade that certain district schools allow kids to actually take advanced placement and so forth. And then there are boundaries after they take these courses as to where they will transfer, or if they will as credit. So I think, I know in both Georgia and Utah, both Todd and Howard have been working on some different barriers within their state that allow more choice for their students in high school to take different types of college opportunities, as opposed to being I don't want to say relegated, but kind of relegated to just AP or just be. And so we've really been working on looking at how do we work with different states who have an appetite to give students the opportunity to experience college while they are in high school, which then gives them the support of a learning success coach. They're still with their parents. They get to try before they buy. And, we just got off a meeting with President Crow earlier today, and he talked about, most kids that go to college don't graduate from college. It's a scary statistic. And, and if you look at kids who are students that spend 5, 6, 7 years before they graduate, if they graduate, a lot of times it's because they get to the end of their junior year, the beginning of their senior year, and they discover they hate the major they chose. And now they have to pivot, and it might take them another 3 years and all the money that goes with that. So we're trying to reduce time and cost to degree and give kids the opportunity to move into whatever learning environment that works for them when they're ready. And so those would be the policy barriers, I think, the restrictions that we're putting on students by their geography and by their grade level.
I just want to invite other people that are listening in to join us. Ask your questions. 2 ways you can ask questions. You can submit it in the Q&A chat window that's in the lower right-hand part of your screen, and just click on that question mark. You can submit it that way. The other way that we can bring you in with a question is to raise your hand, and then that'll put you into a queue, and we can call on you, and you can unmute yourself and then ask the question to the panel. So while we queue those up, let me just sort of ask a question, because we just saw this. We were just diving a little bit into it's. Really good, high quality online learning is more than just sort of putting up a teacher in front of a video platform. It's more than just pushing things out digitally. There's tech support, but there's also, it just seems to me like a support system that's needed to help make sure students are successful. Julie, you were just mentioning, and it is true, that most students that start a college journey, especially at some of our institutions, just don't complete it. And the colleges are realizing that they need student success mentors and coaches and advisors to help make sure they're on track to graduate. And I'd imagine you need a similar type of support system to help make sure that students are completing their work online, and if they run into a problem, that they're getting the help, whether it's technical or something else. But I'd love to start with Julie and then go to Representative Jones and then Senator Stephenson, and just about what are other supports that are needed to help ensure student success in this modality?
What we have done at ASU Prep, which is new in terms of the work we've done in the past, is we have put in place what we call a learning success coach. And that learning success coach is a unique individual that, if a student's full-time with us, we try to keep that student with that learning success coach for the duration of their time with us. If they're just popping in, they get that person for the time that they're there. But the learning success coach, different than the teacher, is kind of a combination of a school counselor as well as a social emotional kind of counselor. They are that person that really gets to know the family. Howard talked a little bit about this. They are the ones that can deal with teenage drama and trauma. They're the ones that recognize the fact that these kids are not showing up, they're disappearing. They're not the teacher that gives the grades. They're a support structure for that student. So we have kids that are truant in our traditional schools. Well, we have kids that are truant in our online schools. And same way, you have to engage the learner and really identify the fact that they're all different. And so what we've been trained to do as teachers is teach to the middle, teach to a group, one teacher, one classroom. Kids are all on the same page, usually at the same time, turning their homework on the same day. And what we know is that works for about 60, 70% of our kids, and then the others fall out and they just kind of hang on along the way. So we have this unique opportunity to engage every learner where they are at that moment, and identifying where that student is critical to the success in this kind of an environment.
That's great. We actually have a couple questions that I'm going to pose because they deal with policy. So use this as a chance to to tee it up for both Representative Jones and Senator Stephenson. Teresa King asks, what are the unintentional barriers do state policies often place in the way of expanding choice options for students? Who would like to take that first out of the two of you?
It's typically the system that it's the money flow. People don't want money flowing from the system to an outside provider. And that's why it takes legislation to make it happen, because the LEAs, the districts, are not going to do it on their own. So we need to set the captives free, so to speak, to make the choices that best serve those students. I might comment that these success coaches that are provided by ASU Prep Digital, when I interview students, I say, what does the success coach do for you? And they say, I learn to self-regulate, because typically people procrastinate until the deadline, and then they say, we have to binge. And so this success coach helps me to space my academics out each day. The other important element that the ASU Prep Digital has is the appropriate use of computer-assisted instructional software that enables the teacher to have the machine do the heavy lifting of personalized instruction. And the brain research shows that when this high-quality computer-assisted instructional software, such as Alex math software for the math, gives immediate interactive feedback, that learning is exponentiated and kids don't get frustrated. But the system basically needs to be broken apart to allow choice, at least in the course choices for high school students. And that's why it's working well in Utah.
Representative Jones?
Yeah, I'll add a little bit to what Howard said. I think Ms. King asked about unintentional barriers. And without a doubt, my 4 years in, I'm in education appropriations and on the education committee. So I get it from a policy standpoint and from a fiscal standpoint. And one of the most important educational or unintentional, or maybe it is intentional, it's really how the money flows. What we do is we've actually created this whole competition when it shouldn't be a silo. Going back to what Julie said, if we put the child at the center of every decision we make, why wouldn't we create cooperation between, hypothetically, a technology provider and the district? Why wouldn't we create a partnership between the parochial school and the district? Maybe the parochial school isn't capable of doing all the STEM courses. Maybe it's really capable in reading, it's capable in history, but maybe there's a way to partner with the district to be able to come back. The moment we have created the idea, may it be in Florida, which I believe it's called FTE, Julie, in Arizona, it has another acronym. In Georgia, it has another acronym. At the end of the day, the way that money flows causes an unintentional, which is we don't create this idea of cooperation and actually circling all of our resources around that child. We can ask every bureaucrat, is the child number one? Yes. But then when you look at each one of the policies around how the money flows, you start realizing it's not, because the child would be better served within an environment where the engagement is high, they can move at their pace, and they can basically get the education when they need it, not between 8 and 4 when the school is open. By the way, I'm a product of public ed. My 4 kids are a product of public ed. So I'm not here bashing the public ed system. I'm here saying the pandemic has given us an opportunity to reevaluate where we're at, and basically say, with all the great resources that exist, school choice should be something that we should all be embracing. But I think, to Mrs. King's point, there are certain policies specifically around money that cause unintended consequences.
That's great. We have 2 other questions. We have one, and maybe this is a good one for you, Julie. It's from David Beard, who's asking, how is ASU Prep helping students know which college courses to take or majors to explore?
So that is a great question, because I think the first thing people think of when they hear a 13-year-old taking a college course, granted that is an anomaly. We don't have a slew of 13-year-olds taking college courses, but we do have them, is, how do you know they're ready, and how do you set them up for success? Again, that goes back to the learning success coach. So between the learning success coach and the parents and the child, the dialogue that takes place in terms of the analysis of their transcript, their performance in the past, what their interest is, who do they want to be, or what do they want to be when they grow up, and then their buy-in. The student has to buy into the fact that, you know, this is going to be tough, and you're going to be treated as a college student, because these kids in our program are actually in ASU courses. They are no different than what you and I would take if we registered for the same course. And so really, really critical that we work with the parent and with the student and the learning success coach to make sure this is a good placement for that student, and that we are not setting them up for a risk factor or any type of intentional failure.
Got it. We have one last question, and then I'm going to just do a very quick whip around. But Christy asks, can you talk a bit more about the benefits of high school students taking college courses in culture, success? Julie, you were just touching a little bit on that. Maybe go one step deeper.
Yeah, I think, you know, Todd talked about it a little bit, but we've created these little silos called preschool, elementary school, middle school, high school, college, and we've put these arbitrary numbers around them of 4 years, you know, 5 years, 6 years, what have you. And then, you know, as kids come into school, we determine when they start, and typically when they, you know, sometimes they age out when they finish based on their age. So none of that has anything to do with learning and academics and capability of the student. So you know, again, I think it goes back to, if we can engage students at an early age in thinking about college and getting engaged in some college courses, and we have what we call our open courses as well as our ASU online courses. And the open courses, which I'm happy to talk to anybody about further, but the open courses give kids the opportunity to get into the course and then go through the coursework. And when they're ready, they actually take the exam for the course. If they pass the exam to their satisfaction, at that point, they pay, or we pay, to make the conversion to a college credit. If they find that they get into those courses and they're not ready, then they can leave those courses with no ramifications. And so we're trying to create these different pathways into college so that when kids graduate from high school, they don't think, am I going to college? That they think, I'm already in college. Now I have to figure out how to keep going.
Mm-hmm. All right, we have 1 minute and 4 seconds left. So I'm just going to do a quick whip around. Again, ExcelinEd has the best state policy summit in the country every year. What is one thing a state policymaker should do in terms of advancing the type of online learning that we were describing today? Senator, let's start with you, and then we'll go to the representative, and then we'll finish with Julie.
Thank you. The best thing, I think, is to find out who has made this work in their states. And I know that Representative Jones and I are both available to you. We want every kid to have these opportunities, so we're willing to be your resource. So don't hesitate to call on us.
Wonderful. Representative?
Force the integration between K-12 and higher ed and the technical schools. Force it policy-wise, and don't give them a choice.
Love it. Julie?
Make it about the students instead of the dollars.
I like
That's fantastic. And we are exactly at time. So Julie, Representative Jones, Senator Stephenson, thank you so much for just a great conversation. ExcelinEd, thanks for just letting us be a part of EdPalooza. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. So appreciate your time and appreciate your questions, and look forward to working with you to serve kids in the future here. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Howard.
Thank you.
Thank you all.